All right, recording started. Welcome back to Thursdays with me. It is April 28th, and we are doing more sentence corrections with "and" as one of the things being tested. So, okay, we went through the rules. We just did that. Here's your copyright reminder. All these problems are from the free GMAT prep software and copyright GMAC. And don't forget where multiple choice questions answers are found. Okay, let's do one. How about this one? And again, don't forget where those multiple choice answers are. Give it a shot, please. Alrighty. We should probably be picking something pretty soon. I'll give you another 20 seconds or so to pick something to that. Okay, let's take a look. If you are Antoine or Eileen or Aaron or Zoe, multiple choice answers, you should pick one. Remember the way this test works, if you, given your amount of experience or inexperience with it, you can't not pick an answer to it. So if you are guessing, if you are in a guessing situation, you have to just rattle off a guess and move on with your life. In fact, that's probably the single most important skill that you have to have on this thing. So, oh yeah, for sentence correction, I don't know that you really have to. I don't know how much value there is to be gained from using a simulation of sentence correction. I mean, I suppose you could do that if you really wanted to, although I think that when it comes to that sort of thing, that the primary value there is more like when you have to deal with conserving space or things like on the quant section, or maybe with mapping passages or something like that. But yeah, I mean, if you want to do that, sure. Could make sense. Okay, let's take a look. So today's topic is this. I mean, this is no sentence correction problem ever tests only one thing, but this is definitely a thing that is going to be tested here. So kind of cheating here, but it's a thing that's going to be in there that you want to look at. So, and notice that when things are differences in the choices, like when they're splits, so to speak, between different answer choices, you know that you should pay attention to them. So notice that you have three choices here that have an and. And what two things are being connected by that and? So when you find a decision point or a split in the choices, you have to find the same ideas, and you have to find how those same ideas are expressed in different ways in the choices. So when you find what the book calls splits, or what I like to call decision points, you need to find the same ideas in different choices. So I mean, yeah, right, it's what Will points out. It's the two verbs. The things that are parallel with and here are these two verbs. The thing about scientists found something and they concluded something else. So found and concluded, I mean, the word have can be used for both of those. So you can take the have or leave it. Like you could have that as the way they did it here. They have found and have concluded. You could also write it as just they have found and concluded. These are both parallel. Like the word have can apply to both of these things, as in choice E, or it could apply, or you can just repeat the word have. So, but notice those are the ideas you have to connect. So the deal is that in choice A and choice B, those words are connected in some other way. That's the point. How are those words connected in A and B? They're not connected by and. How are they connected? They're connected by comma ing. Aha. Look at that. So that's the wrong color. Sorry about that. Okay. So notice that, because the deal is you have a lot of these things like and comma ing, and like independently those things do lots of stuff. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different issues dealing with comma ing. There's a whole bunch of different issues dealing with and. Like, for example, and could be testing parallelism, but in this case it isn't. And like comma ing could be testing like various aspects of relationship or tense or causation or whatever, but here it's not really. So the question is, what is the difference between verb 1, comma, verb 2 ing and verb 1 and verb 2? What's the primary difference there? So here's the deal. I mean, when you have a modifier, I mean, this is going to sound really stupid in these words, but a modifier has to actually, you know, like, modify stuff. Like, it has to actually describe the thing that it modifies. Like, here's a couple of examples of sentences. Here, a couple of examples. The pedestrian was struck by a bus, comma, dying instantly. The pedestrian was struck by a bus, dying an hour later in the hospital. And then let's say that I change this to have the word and in that. So copy, paste. Pedestrian was struck by a bus and died instantly. Pedestrian was struck by a bus and died an hour later in the hospital. Okay, so what we're going to do on these, we're going to vote. I'm going to change your polling temporarily to this green check, red X thing. So you should see that. Let me show you what that looks like. You should see the green check and red X in that area where you used to have your multiple choice options. So what we're going to do is we're going to go down each one of these. And you're going to give me a green check for I think it's okay. And you're going to give me a red X for I think it's not okay. So let's do these one at a time. Why does that say that? Not okay. Haha, just kidding. All right, this one. Give me a green check or a red X. You guys are basically split pretty much evenly on that one. More of you who don't like it than who do, but you're pretty evenly distributed on it. Actually, now we've got more votes in, it's almost totally even. Here's what you got so far. What about the second one? Let me clear that out. All right, what about the second one? This whole thing about essential that someone is mentioning, that is a difference that is never, ever, ever tested on this exam. So not only is that not the point here, that's actually never the point on this exam. If you are ever thinking about whether a modifier is, quote, essential, unquote, then you are thinking about things that are irrelevant to this exam. This one, give me a green check or a red X. Okay, so most of you don't like that one. All right, let's clear out your responses to that. What about the third one? So most of you like that. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. What about this last one? Hey, what's kind of interesting about this more than anything else is that if you've seen more than like 2 of my presentations ever, you should probably know that if there's 2 pairs of things like this, then probably one of them goes one way and the other one probably goes the other way. So probably, right? Otherwise you'd be wasting your time by presenting them both together. But anyway, here's your votes. Okay, I mean, let's take a look at these things. So what we need first is what we need first with every single sentence correction problem ever, which is what? Like, what is always the first issue with every sentence correction problem in the world? Like, what do you have to establish first? Which is really just normal reading, but you have to establish it. What is that? What is step 1? Yeah, it's not something we agree to highlight what it is, right? It's what Sam said. It's like understanding what the passage is actually trying to say. Is what Peter and Sam are saying. I mean, subject-verb agreement, not necessarily, unless it's actually being tested. I mean, for example, looking at subject-verb agreement in this problem would be a waste of your time because there are no issues of subject-verb agreement here. Like there are no splits where you have verbs going between singular and plural or anything. But yeah, no, the first step is understand what are the relationships between all the major parts of the sentence. I mean, always, which is really just regular book reading. I mean, if you think about it, it sounds kind of demanding, but it's really not demanding, right? Like when you're reading a book, if there are ever 2 things that are like thing A and thing B, if you don't understand exactly what they are, then you will not keep reading. You'll be like, oh, didn't catch that, and you'll go back. Or if there's like a modifier that's describing something, if you don't know exactly what it's describing, then you won't keep reading. You'll be like, nope, didn't catch that, and you'll go back. Everything, every single relationship. So just remember that that's always step 1. Step 1 is like, how are all the parts of the sentence related to each other? So, I mean, this is going to be, and you'll know when you have splits, you'll know what the issue is in particular, right? But, so like, think about the deal here with this. Here we have these. Are these 2 descriptions of the same thing happening at the same instant, or are these separate things? Like, could you actually conceptually separate these 2 from each other, or could you not? You can't, right? Because these are instantly actually means that this is the same thing happening at the same time. These are not 2 different things. So these are not 2 things in any meaningful way. I mean, these are descriptions of exactly the same event in exactly the same time frame. So As opposed to dying an hour later, which is very obviously in a different time frame because it's an hour later. So, like in this case, you have being struck by a bus, and you have dying an hour later, which is in a different time frame, therefore it's a different thing. Right? These are two different things that happen at genuinely different times. These are separable. Like if you drew a timeline that was like a number line kind of thing, you could actually put two dots on a number line representing these things. Like here you could not. Like if you had these two things, you could put a maximum of one dot on number line representing both of these. They would be like, oh, same dot. But here, you could actually genuinely have a number line, like a timeline. That's supposed to be going the other way. Kidding. You could actually have a number line with two dots that represent these two things at different times, like separated by an hour. You can't do that here. Smiley face, if that makes sense. Smiley face icon, if that's a thing that makes sense. These are genuinely two different things that happened separately, or at least conceptually separable. Can be thought of as different things. So the thing is, a modifier doesn't make any sense here because these are different things. I mean, you can't use a modifier when you are talking about something that is genuinely a different thing. Because that's the whole point of modifiers, is that you're not supposed to be talking about a different thing. You're supposed to be modifying the same thing. So definitely in this kind of context, modifier doesn't make sense. So this would be incorrect, because modifier doesn't make sense. On the other hand, comma ing is absolutely a perfect modifier to use for this, because this is what comma ing modifiers do. Comma ing modifiers describe the previous action. They don't describe the previous noun, so someone who wrote that's describing a bus, that's actually incorrect. And you should review the basics of how comma ing works, because that's not how that works. But can't really go over those basics here, but you can just check that out in the course books or what have you. But comma ings describe previous action, which in this case is that. It's perfect. I mean, that's exactly what we are describing. We're giving more description of that action. So that's perfectly correct. So this one's okay, and that one's not okay. First sentence is okay, second sentence is not okay. Now, if you talk about these other two sentences, so the word and, yeah, can't do the word and with something like this, because most of you like that, but this doesn't make sense, because it's not and. It's not thing A and thing B. I mean, the word and in this kind of context is used to separate two things that are actually different things. Right. A and B is used when A and B are actually two different things. I mean, if you were making some sort of PowerPoint or something for this, then to use that construct, you would have to have an A and a B that could legitimately be like bullet points. You know, like, because you could do that here. What bullet point was struck by a bus, bullet point died an hour later, that works with and. So, I mean, going into a coma presumably would be something that would happen at least some finite amount of time later. I mean, again, see, the word instantly is the word here that tells us we're talking about the same time frame here. I mean, if you said that instantly knocked him into a coma or something, then same problem. So this doesn't make sense because and is inappropriate here. It's not two separate things. And I mean, in general, if a modifier works, then and can't work. And if and works, then a modifier can't work. Because these things are mutually exclusive, right? If you have and, then you're saying that you're talking about two different things. But if you're talking about a modifier, then you're talking about two descriptions of the same thing. I mean, these are not, there's no way that both of these can be correct. So if you see this kind of split, that's what you're thinking about. In this case, it's time frame that separates these things. But if they are genuinely conceptually separable in whatever way, then you can't use a modifier for them, but you can use and. So this would work perfectly fine. Was struck by a bus and died an hour later. Then this could actually be bullet point and other bullet point. Yes, it could totally work, right? So if we take that here's problem that we're looking at over here, let's look at that here. Here's the concept. So if you've got and, you want to be talking about two different things. So what are these? I mean, you have finding a bunch of signs of moving water, and then you have drawing a conclusion. So drawing scientific conclusions from that. I mean, if we're going to put this on a number line, how many dots is that? Is that one dot or is that two? It's two dots, right? Because no matter how awesome of a scientist you are, you have to go collect data, and then you have to think about it. I mean, this is not one process, right? You don't magically have conclusions as soon as there is evidence. So meaning you've got, like, here's that's a thing, and that goes somewhere on our hypothetical number line. And then this is another thing, and that goes somewhere else in that number line. I mean, there may not be a whole lot of time that passes in between these things, but these are still genuinely separate things. As opposed to something like this. As opposed to, like, if you say scientists recently noticed that let's say, like, scientists recently noticed signs that or recently noticed evidence of moving water on Mars, comma, establishing that the planet was once home to bodies of liquid water. I mean, this would make sense because then there's no passage of time in between these things. Like, finding evidence of this and establishing that this is a fact, those are actually the same thing. Because this evidence is exactly the thing that establishes this fact. As opposed to reaching evidence and then later drawing conclusions from it, which implies there's some sort of scientific thinking that goes on in between there. So, can't have a modifier because that's not a thing. It's not a description. It's not a modifier. Can't do it. No, therefore is not really the key word because therefore is kind of not the key word. I mean, the point is that you have a modifier versus an and. And even if you don't have the therefore there, that whole issue is very much still an issue for the same reason. So, nope, there's nothing non-parallel about that. As was is not repeated. Not getting that. I mean, of course was is not repeated. You can't say was died. You got two verbs there. The first verb is was struck, and the second verb is died. So there's no issue with that there. I mean, I'm not I'm not sure what you're thinking that's supposed to look like, but there's definitely no such thing as one side. But yeah, no problem with parallelism there. That's totally separate. You can't make changes like that to the sentences. Remember, don't try to edit the sentences. Don't do it. That's a dead end path. There's no good to come of that. Okay. Anyways, we got this. So this is the and deal with today, right? It's a pretty big deal. So there's been a couple of problems that work like this, so it's not just this one. But notice, this might seem like, oh, this is some sort of like nitpicky distinction, but notice this is not a nitpicky distinction at all. This is very black versus very white. I mean, you've got a split where you have 3 choices that do and you have 2 choices that have a modifier. I mean, this is why you should never think of these as like, here is why this individual choice is wrong. And this is why you should always think of it as like, I compared these against those, and I saw that this was clearly an issue. Because if you were looking at choice A or B by itself, it would be really hard to find this point. I mean, in fact, you would have to be as good as a professional editor or writer to even see any of these things. But you don't have to do that. That's why they make this a multiple choice test, guys. I mean, the biggest culprit as far as perpetuating that, honestly, is answer keys. Because answer keys don't tell you, oh, hey, compare A and B against C, D, and E. They don't do that. Answer keys are like, here's why A is wrong, and here's why B is wrong. And that's what they do. But when you look at an answer key, you should always make sure, like, okay, but why would I even be looking at that? And that needs to come from, I would be comparing these against those because I saw this difference. I mean, remember that you're never looking at these at random. You know, there's a lot of students who try to train themselves to think of something completely at random, cold, out of the blue, and that's absolutely not how you should do this at all. And you got a very clean difference here. So the modifiers don't work. As far as the rest of the choices, there are a couple of differences here. I mean, you get the way that express these statistics at the end. Let's look at that. So nobody picked E to this in the original polling. I mean, you might have just noticed that there's this. You have some of the choices say then, and some of the choices say as. Where do those go with? There's also, yeah, D is also kind of stupid, but we'll get there in a second. Yeah. If you're getting at the point that D could actually be any quantity of water in the world, then yes, we'll get there in a second. What does the as and then go with? Some of you guys are thinking way too much. What's the other half of that? And when you see an as versus an and, what's going to decide that? Yeah, I mean, as much goes with as, and more goes with than. You don't have more as, and you don't have as much than. I mean, again, do not overthink this stuff. Like if you guys are looking at the stuff in the comparison, whoopsie, don't do it, guys. I mean, if these were all as, and that was not an issue, then you would start looking at these more complicated issues of comparisons and such like. But I mean, guys, this is like as versus and. I mean, this is very simple, and like as much as is a thing, and as much than is not a thing. And 3 times more as is not a thing. And D almost does it right, but it doesn't do it right because you have, like, there is a more than, but the problem is that there's also a 3 times as much than, and that doesn't work. Like, because as much needs as. Like, if you were going to write something like this, you would have to write as much as or more than X. Because as much takes as and more takes than, and you can't delete either of those. So there's no as to go with as much. So no, it's not a thing either. That leaves us with C. As Peter points out, there's also the simple logic of the words in choice D, dog, just being stupid. Like if you, like imagine if you say something like this. You say something like, the kids here are as tall as or taller than me. I mean, think about what that means about the kids here. I mean, this means that the kids are absolutely any height at all. You're right, up to blah, blah, of anything. I mean, they're up to my height or they're taller. Well, that covers everything, right? So, like, choice D is also kind of dumb because choice D is actually saying that this is any quantity at all, which Peter pointed out earlier. This means any quantity. So, I mean, you're not going to have a sentence that says that the crust is absolutely any positive quantity of water, so that's going to be silly. So, when it comes to that sort of question, the question is if the original said as much as, you can take any meaning that is reasonable. So if you have a choice that says as much as, and you have another choice that says more than, I mean, if those both make sense, then they can either one of them can be fine. I mean, there's nothing sacred at all about the original. The original is just a totally random answer choice. So any meaning that makes sense is fine, and any meaning that doesn't make sense is not fine. And that's really all there is to that. Nikki, you see words on the screen now, right? Okay, we know. So there we go. But I mean, notice that when you see these kinds of splits, make sure you keep it simple if you can. Like if you have this as versus than difference, okay, good, see the screen. If you have this kind of difference of as versus than, I mean, don't start burying yourself in complex comparison issues if all you got to do is like look at more as and more than. Always look at the simple stuff first. Okay. Biggest takeaway from that problem is this. Again, this seems like a small thing, but it's a pretty big thing. And if they give you a split, a test it, then by all means. Yep. Okay. How about this one? Remember where the multiple choice answers are found. These are found here. Give it a shot. All right, most of you have answers. If you don't have one, then please pick one. Nikki, I think it's just you. Your interface is going to look a little different from this, but you should still have your multiple choice options in some sort of arrangement that looks something like this in some way, I think. Anyways, okay, let's take a look. So again, I mean, remember that the key differences in these things are probably going to be easier than normal during these Thursday sessions because we have a topic of the session, right? Like, you know, let's look at the word and think about it. The point, though, is that when you see this stuff in future problems, you know what to look at, and you know what's going to be an issue. So, I mean, this might be easier than normal when you see this, but you have to be cued into this in the future, is basically the point. So, okay, so we have this issue. Some of these things have and some of them don't. So the question is, what's the deal here? And if you have this kind of split, the two separate things are not, is basically what you want to think about. So, and it should be pretty clear that they're not, right? Because you have the anatomy of the turtle, and you have a direct consequence of that anatomy. So it's like, this is a thing, some factoid about the anatomy of the turtle. It's not 2 bullet points, right? Like if you were going to do this PowerPoint style, you'd have like bullet point can draw in exposed parts. And then this blue part here would not be another bullet point of the same kind. It doesn't make sense, right? Like if you were going to make a slide of this in any sort of PowerPoint presentation, you would indent that more. It would be like more indent, and then it would be like attackers can't attack stuff, can't bite stuff. Right? The point is there's another indent here. This doesn't make any sense as bullet and other bullet. It doesn't make sense. So we don't want the and. Doesn't really fly. Yeah, we do it. As far as the other two choices go that remain, I mean, you chose pretty overwhelmingly between those, but some differences. One difference is the word can is there in the top one. And it's not, oh yeah, there's also that, right? You have the word can. You don't have that here. I mean, the word allow already captures the meaning of can. So allow plus also can is redundant. That's a thing. Although, yeah, you can also just notice that you've got allow and allows there, for sure, right? Absolutely. You have singular verb allows and plural verb allow. And the subject there is like what allows that? It's the design. The design of blah blah blah. The design of blah 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 stuff. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's still design. The design allows the turtle to do stuff, not the design allow. So these are also gone for that reason. Also allow plus can, right? I mean, if you allow something, then that means it can happen as a result. Like the fact that it can happen is already captured by allow. And again, you wouldn't have to notice that at random. You can just notice that the word can is here, and it's not in the other choices. There's also a thing with D there, too. D has the word can in it with allow. That's not a thing either. So, but yeah, the thing about that. And doesn't make sense with these. Also, subject, verb, redundancy. And notice none of these things are things that you are looking at random. They're all stuff that you have a very good reason to look at because you have distinct splits in the choices between these options, like telling you to look at them, test them. Neato. All right, let's look at another problem. Let's take a look at how about this one. When you do this one, remember with step one, step one is what the heck is the sentence you've been trying to communicate or say. And when you do that step, remember, don't forget when you do step one, which is like the step of what the heck is the sentence saying, don't forget that the main ideas, the main point of the sentence should be expressed in the main sentence, not in the modifiers. So don't forget this, right? If the main point of the sentence is to say blah, 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 then the main part of the sentence should actually say blah, 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 blah. Keep that in mind. If you don't know what I'm getting at with that, then we'll get there. It's sad. But go for it. And that's where your multiple choice answers are found. Okay, let's take a look at this thing. If you haven't picked something, then please do. Okay. Let's take a look. All right. What does the sentence have to actually say? What's the main point? Main point of the sentence? The main point of the sentence is that she makes as much money as an elephant. Okay, so, and because the elephant in some sort of way is the subject of the sentence here, right? So the sentence needs to actually say that the main point of the sentence is that, and notice there's not just one elephant in the world. So we need to be saying like that the elephant that gave rides, blah, 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 was earning or earned as much as she did. This is what the sentence has to actually say, right? This is the subject of the sentence, and this is the main verb of the sentence. This is the point that we're actually trying to make. Like we're not trying to say that there was an elephant. That's not the point of the sentence, right? Something like see, nope, not the point. Again, when people talk, especially when people are very verbose and sort of circuitous with the way that they talk, sometimes you'll hear people say stuff like see. You'll hear them. You'll hear them say it with their mouth. Because, that there was this elephant and that blah, blah, blah. That's not, you can't write like that. It's not good writing. Good writing actually has the main point as the main sentence as it has. So, quite exclusive of any sort of grammatical issues or whatever, this is not the issue of income maldistribution. This is not the point. The point is not that there was an elephant. The point is that this elephant made a certain amount of money. That's the point. This is step one. You can actually figure this out before you even look at the choices. And the point is, even if this were choice A, you could still figure this out. Like even if the original sentence said that there was an elephant, blah blah blah, and it earned this amount of money, you could still be like, nope, that's wrong. That makes no sense. and you could still say what the sentence should say instead. You could absolutely do all of that. So, yes, you could. I mean, in other words, you don't need to wait until you have answer choices to make this sort of deduction. You can just look at the words and be like, I get it. I know what the sentence is trying to say. You can figure this out during step 1. Yes, you can. Before you even look at the choices is the point. In other words, like by the time you get to the answer choices, you should already have this figured out. You should already know this structure, intended meaning. You shouldn't have to go back and think about it. If you do, that's kind of a fail of step 1. So like same thing, I mean, D, you've got even bigger issues, right? She once noted the elephant and was earning. So the D is saying she noted the elephant and she was earning as much as she was earning. That's definitely not a sensible sentence. And then same thing, she noted the elephant. And so C and E have the same kind of problem. Like she didn't note the elephant, and she didn't note that there was an elephant. The point isn't that there was an elephant, and the point isn't the elephant. The point is that the elephant was making a certain amount of money. So the way that A and B are structured, that the elephant was earning a certain amount of money, and then that the elephant had been earning. So in terms of what things should be in the main part of the sentence, the only 2 choices that even have the right pieces in the main part are choice A and choice B. So smiley face icon, if that makes sense. Okay. Now as far as A versus B, I mean, you've got these 2 things. Tell me a story about the time frames in which these 2, the elephant and Barbara Wooten, tell me a story about the time frames in which the money is being earned here. Exactly the same time frame. It's in the past, but it's the exact same time frame. Right? The point, the entire point of the sentence is that these 2 entities, this person and this elephant, were earning exactly the same amount of money at exactly the same time. So having these in different time frames would be totally nonsense. Right? The point of the sentence is that Barbara and the elephant made exactly the same money in exactly the same time frame. So there is absolutely no question that we need these things to be happening in the same tense, because we are talking about things happening in exactly literally the same time situation. So what she earned is in the normal past tense. So we need another past tense verb, was. Was is a past tense verb. Had been is a different time frame. Like if the elephant had been earning, then you would have to be she had earned or she had been earning. You know, those are not compatible tenses. Like this would imply that the elephant had been earning money before that, up to that point in some sort of way, but this would be somehow prior to that and like contingent on it. We don't want that. We want the same thing. I mean, this is the same thing, same time frame. So that's what we want. Earned. You could also have said the elephant earned. Earned and was earning are both in the past. That distinction is not a huge distinction. They're not testing it. But had been earning, had earned is a fundamentally different verb tense. So B incompatible, A compatible. Neatos. I mean, there's also the problem of, I mean, the problem with this thing with commas here is that you're kind of saying there's only one elephant in the world. That's the other problem with choice B. Because when you, this will never be the only issue because they don't strictly test this, but if you know it, it's also a thing. If this is between commas, then that kind of implies that you're talking about the same thing if it's removed. So the problem with B is that it also implies that the elephant, without this modifier, is specific enough to actually say which modifier it is. But that, of course, it's not. I mean, there's a lot of elephants in the world. But the elephant that gave rise to children is one specific elephant. So just, you got to have that in one piece. That's not going to be the only thing that they're testing, but if you got to have that modifier to narrow something down, then it can't be blocked out by commas. So yeah, let's see. What's the problem with that? I mean, those dots are not doing the same thing. I mean, this word that is a modifier of a noun. It's modifying an elephant. This word that is something you put in front of a whole sentence to use it as a piece of a larger sentence. They're not the same word. If you know any European languages, this, that, and that are actually different words in like French, Spanish, Catalan, Italian, many of those languages, Western European languages. Like these would actually be different words. In fact, in Eastern European languages, they would be too, depending on which language you're talking about. Like this would actually be a word, and this would not. This would like go as a suffix on some of those other things. But the point is, these are not actually two of the same word. I mean, you have this word that and that word that are actually two different words that are doing two different things. They both happen to be spelled the same, but that's kind of where the difference ends. That's kind of where the similarity ends there. But those are actually two different words. So I hope that makes some sense. Well, Z is going to ask my question. Okay, let's see what we got here with another question. Let's do how about this one? Knock out at least one more, and we'll see where we're at with time. And remember where you get your multiple choice answers. That's where you get them. You get them there. Give it a shot. All right, let's pick a thing. Yeah, no, the problems, Peter, the problems in these sentences usually are based on, a lot of them are kind of spins on things that have been in the New York Times magazine or New York Times paper or similar things. They're not plucked at random. I mean, like, if they're written like this with historical weight to them, then they probably are things that are significant. So, like in the case of Japan, absolutely, the population is totally shrinking. Sometimes you really have more free time than you really should in your life. If you Google the sentences, and sometimes you can actually find the original New York Times articles that inspired them. In which sometimes the sentences are pretty close to the original, and sometimes they're not. It's kind of interesting, but there's not a lot of pedagogical value so much in doing that, but yeah, that is where they get some of their sentences from. So, thing. In any case, let's take a look. So, okay. You know that one of these issues that we're going to have today is and, because that's its name, right? So you have this and as long as we're looking at the different connectors, we might as well look at them all, right? Like what two ideas are being connected there? Yeah, it's one idea is the fact that the population is shrinking, and the other idea is the fact that there's a projected decline in the future. So what ideas are connected here? Well, the population right now, that is, the population of Japan is shrinking really fast. And then there's this other idea that for the next 50 years, it's projected to shrink by blah, 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 blah. So, I mean, are these are not the same idea. I mean, one of these is what's happening right now, and one of these is what's going to happen over the next 50 years. I mean, notice, by the way, this projection shouldn't be in the future because the projection is happening right now. So if you had a sentence like this where there were two verbs, you don't. But if you had a separate sentence that were kind of like this, that you could have something like demographers project that Japan's population will shrink, blah, blah, blah. I mean, notice that if you had this kind of sentence, then you would want this sentence to be in the present. You would want this verb to be in the present, because demographers are doing this right now. That's what's happening at the moment. But, of course, the projection is about the future. So that part should be in the future tense. If you had this kind of sentence, like if these were both verbs, these are the tenses that they should be in. Give me a smiley face if that makes sense. I guess decline is the, I mean, decline is not a verb in any of these sentences, so, because to decline is not a verb that has a tense. And decline is actually a noun in choices A and B. So this is not what's happening here. Just to make that clear, I can write that on the slide. This is not happening here. But possible. I mean, you could definitely express the same sort of idea in this kind of way. But the way they did this, I mean, these are genuinely two separate ideas. I mean, one of these is what is happening at the moment of now, and one of these is a future projection. So these are not, neither of these describes the other one. So you would actually want to connect these with and. Sure you would. You know, I mean, these are still separate. I mean, they have some sort of relationship, I guess, indirectly, but the fact that something is shrinking right now doesn't describe the fact that it's projected to shrink so much in the next 50 years, right? In the same way, if I'm losing weight right now, that doesn't describe, oh, I'm going to be like 100 pounds lighter in 10 years. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. These are separate things. So a modifier doesn't make sense here. Color code that in blue. ING, no, it doesn't really make sense. Same thing, this as a modifier, nope, doesn't work. Hey, you want and is exactly what you want. And then with is still a modifier, and this still doesn't, it is not a modifier. Then this is still two separate ideas. So any sort of modifier that is genuinely a modifier is inappropriate. So this with C, cat, and debug. There's also separately this issue of the way that A and B start. Like notice the example that I've used in a couple of these other study halls is this sentence here. I've used this pair of sentences in some previous study halls. Coming home from school, the wind blew me off my bike. This sentence is incorrect. And then this version of it would be reasonable. Coming home from school, I was blown off my bike by the wind. This is reasonable. And notice the difference here. I mean, the difference is you have this initial modifier coming home from school. It needs to describe the thing that's after it. So, I mean, the wind doesn't go to school. I mean, unless this is some desert creation myth where the wind goes to school with the clouds and the rain in the back of a big turtle. But unless it's that, nope. Right, so the wind doesn't go to school, but I go to school. Similarly, what is shrinking? What is actually shrinking? Yeah, the population is, right? So A, you've got the decline. The decline is not shrinking. I mean, in fact, the entire point of the problem is supposedly the decline is even bigger. So this is wrong. And then the population here is okay. Like that part's all right. Because, like in other words, that correspondence is okay. But then the problem is nation here. I mean, you can't compare a nation to a population of another one. I mean, it would have to be a nation versus another nation, or a population versus another. I mean, notice these are totally separate issues from, like, these modifiers are incorrect in two different ways. The first way is that even by being modifiers in the first place, they're already wrong, because these are two separate things. So having a modifier there at all is nonsense. You would want thing one and thing two. So already having a modifier there is nonsense off the top. But then on top of that, shrinking doesn't describe this correctly. And shrinking faster than a nation, you can't compare population to nation. So. And that also gets rid of D, which is the only other competing wrong answer choice. Right? The Japanese population is shrinking faster than a country. No, can't do it. Can't compare a population to a country. Nope. Versus, notice the way that the comparison is constructed in the choice that's actually correct. I mean, you've got the population of Japan versus that of any other nation. This is done flawlessly. I mean, you have this corresponds to this. Perfectly done. Make sure you notice how that works. I mean, that's the whole point of these pronouns, that of and those of, is to do exactly this sort of thing. Is to pluck a noun out of a one half of a comparison and to use it in the other half of the comparison. So, yeah, okay. What the question in the box? I don't know what WRT stands for, but I mean, the parallel items are is and is. That's it. I mean, whatever you're saying after that doesn't have to be. I mean, clearly you don't realistically expect every single element of two parallel things to be parallel. I mean, that's not how real life sentences work. I mean, as long as the core elements of those parts are parallel, that's all that matters. You know, like if you say, I want a steak and a Diet Coke, that's parallel. If you say, I want a T-bone steak butterflied into two pieces, with the first piece medium rare with garlic sauce and the second piece medium well with spinach and barbecue sauce, and a Diet Coke, it's still parallel. I mean, the point there is that sometimes you have different things to say about different stuff, and sometimes you have more things to say about one thing than you do about another thing. I mean, that's just kind of how real life sentences work. So, Peter not really getting the essence of the question. I mean, when you read the original, it should always be obvious what the meaning is supposed to be. So, like, even if you did have outside knowledge of this, it shouldn't theoretically help, because it should always be perfectly clear already what the sentence is trying to tell you. Like, when you look at this, nothing else this could possibly mean other than that the population is shrinking faster than any other country's population. Because, I mean, the country itself is clearly not shrinking. I mean, you know, it's an island, it's sitting there, and it has the same size as it did like 100 years ago. So there's nothing else this could really mean. So even if you had seen this somewhere and you were cool like that, it still wouldn't really help you, because the intended meaning of the sentences should always be clear in context. I mean, like at the very most, the most that might help you would be saving you like 3 seconds of your life. And you're like, oh, I remember seeing this in the Times or something. But otherwise, yeah. I mean, you should always be able to determine that by just looking at the words and being like, what could this possibly mean? And there should be one thing that could possibly mean. So just, yeah, shouldn't help. But it'd be kind of neat if you saw something that you thought you'd seen before that could probably snap you back to attention, at least to a certain degree. What do you think? All right, so there it is. Thanks, guys. Time flies, huh? It is 5:30 Pacific, 8:30 Eastern, so we are done. Thank you very much. Welcome back. And so we're back to this time slot, at least for the foreseeable next couple sessions. So I think we're actually till the summertime. We're back to this time slot. So, alrighty. Good afternoon, good evening, good night, good luck. Thank you. And till next